Hello, dear friends. My name is Lucas, and today I had the absolute pleasure of hosting Curt Jaimungal on this channel. Curt is a filmmaker and host of the Theories of Everything channel. This channel will be familiar to a lot of you, but if it isn't, please check it down below. I will say beforehand, my internet connection was a little bit unstable near the end, so I had to edit out just a little bit of footage, but overall I think it gels pretty well. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. For me, it was one of my all-time favorites. I can already say that with certainty. Curt is one of the most authentic people I've ever met. So please enjoy.
Recording in progress, it said. So
Okay,
there we go.
I'm gonna keep that in. That's beautiful.
Okay.
Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm joined here by Curt Jaimungal. It's an absolute honor to have you. Thank you for coming on, Curt.
Thank you so much, Lucas. I appreciate that.
I've been following your channel for a couple of years, and I don't think I have the exact capacity to keep up with all your episodes, but sometimes there's a more philosophical one that's a bit less hard physics or hard mathematics, and then I can listen to them on repeat and keep finding new insights. So I think you're doing a wonderful job at that.
I
So yeah.
appreciate that. Man, you sound almost exactly like Ryan Gosling.
Oh,
Has anyone ever told you that?
no, but I like his voice.
If
That's
any,
good. Okay.
yeah, if anyone's listening, just close your eyes and picture Ryan Gosling. And that's almost like how you look anyhow.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll take that. I wanted to start with a question I ask a lot of my guests, and that is about your childhood. And I'd like to know what that was like if you want to share some of that.
Yeah, I was a I wasn't a popular kid nor an unpopular kid. I was I didn't have plenty of pressure from my parents to go into any field. Though when I was young, my dad did teach me chess like hardcore
Mm,
since I was 3 years old or so, and took me to chess tournaments, taught me math, high level math when I was smaller, and so that framed me in an analytical way, a logical way. Never liked to do projects with my hands. I don't care about woodworking. I don't care about fixing around the house, like plumbing. I don't care about any of that. I like puzzles. I like to think, and that's always been with me. Yeah, I would. I yeah. Anything else? What in particular do you want to know about my childhood? Because I can go on for hours.
yeah, no, I understand. I understand. I'll think about what is relevant. Already, this is very telling for me. It's a way it shapes your mind because I contacted you initially saying that I like the way your mind works because it's quite different from me. I'm not able
Mhm.
to go into that conceptual space as deeply as you are, I think. And I like to be also a bit more embodied. Um, but yeah, sometimes I've heard glimpses of you in your childhood thinking about God, for example, or that you maybe decide. I think you decided at some point that you think God doesn't exist because you had a certain thing that maybe your brother said to you. Were you like as a child, were you thinking about these deeper questions you're tackling right now already? Or were you just more of a kid that thought about school and just normal things?
Well, when I was 8, I started to think about that. So when I was 8, I remember asking my brother about how could the universe have come into existence? Why something rather than nothing? And for some reason, that was the last linchpin of God in my life. And my
Mm,
brother had said, because he was studying physics at the time, he said he told me about quantum fluctuations. And I'm old enough now to know that that's not actually an explanation. But at the time, I thought it was. And so I thought I had the last piece of the puzzle. And I
mm,
remember laying in my bed and staring at the ceiling and thinking, okay, then not only does there not need to be God, but if there's no need to be a God, then somehow there isn't a God. And ever since then, I became this whippersnapping, pretentious, orgulous young man with a superiority complex over anyone who was cretinous enough to believe in so-called religion
mm.
or follow so-called especially institutional religion, because isn't it obvious like all institutions are corrupt?
Yes.
Yeah, as if you're not corrupt, as if I'm not corrupt, as if yeah, as if I'm not more corrupt, like way more, well, and as if there's not far more good in other organizations and other places than I think, in the same way that I underestimate my own maliciousness. I I underestimate the the goodness in others, or the goodness in other
Yeah.
places.
Yeah. That rings true to me as well. I had a similar journey of getting to that realization. Actually, today it's a funny story. I live in The Hague, which is like the political capital of the Netherlands, let's say.
Mm.
And in my teenage years, I got more and more suspicious of politicians and that in general. And today I saw the prime minister, who used to be prime minister at least, and he was just in a bookshop, just picking out some books and
Oh,
just lounging around. And I looked at that guy, and I wanted to speak to him just to say hi, whatever. But he left quite shortly after, and I was like, this is a normal dude, you
and that
know.
was the prime minister, you said?
Yeah, and I think he's got goodness in him regardless. I'm sure of that actually, and it made it harder for me to be that suspicious self, or that self that seeks corruption in others. And that's something I'm generally trying to do less of, because I'm seeing how it is unproductive for me to view people as corrupt, or institutions for that matter. And I like that you're critical of yourself as well in the other way. I think it's extremely helpful, and I think it shows in your case that you work on that. So yeah.
Well, I have a policy in myself to assume maliciousness, selfishness, or indolence, so like laziness,
Mm,
rather than any goodness in myself. And there are many, many examples in my life of that. One that comes to mind, I think I've said this before, is one time I was washing the dishes at my sister's house, and she came home, and then she was like, "Oh, why are you washing the dishes?" And I said, "Well, I didn't want you to come home to a dirty place," something like that. But then I was analyzing myself. I'm like, that doesn't feel right. It just it didn't jive exactly.
mm,
And and I realized the reason I was washing the dishes was because I had known she was coming home around then. So I wanted her to see me washing the
yes,
dishes. So she
yes.
thinks I'm someone who helps clean up. Not only that, so that she can have evidence, okay, Curt cleans, but furthermore, so that she can clean something else so that I don't have to clean. So I can say, look, I'm cleaning up. I want you to do so and so. But all of that's under the surface. And it took some examination for me to see that tiny, tiny situation had or revealed such like a Pandora's box of foolishness on my part
Yeah.
and folly.
Does that then not translate to other people in your case? Because you say you do the opposite with what I think you said, institutions. Do you do
Yeah,
the
I
same
can
with
distrust
people?
myself and trust others. So
Mm,
I think that's a great policy. I
mm,
because I distrust breeds mis sorry, mistrust breeds mistrust. And and there's some game theoretic arguments about tit for tat and like,
yes.
so yes, I'm sure you're aware. Okay. That you should start off with a policy of trust and then you amend it when there's evidence, but you start off by opening your hand and allowing others to snap it. And then
Mm,
even afterward, even after you've been burned, that the correct path is to still put your hand forward and say, I know that you've hurt me. I know that I can get hurt again, but I'm willing to pay that price.
well, did it take long for you to be able to trust people, or were you already trusting as a child, or was it something that came and went?
I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's something that, firstly, I don't say that I trust people. I work on trusting.
Mm,
I don't think I trust enough. I don't like this phrase trust but verify. So that's something that came to mind.
yes, that's the
I'm sure
Bitcoin
you've heard
phrase.
that.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because trust but verify is a contradiction. Like unless they have some other definition of trust.
How do you
Like
mean?
it's something that sounds, because if you trust, why would you verify? So let's say you say 4 times 4 to the power of 6 is 4,000. Then
Mm,
I can trust you. Or I can verify that and say it's 4,096. So I can trust what you're saying, or I can verify what you're saying, but they're not entirely the, if I trusted if I trust my computer, I don't verify it. I don't understand what the
Yes.
difference is.
Okay, no, I see. What the Bitcoiners say is they say don't trust, but
Yes, okay.
yes, okay.
Yeah,
So
don't trust but verify. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what
that's
it
what
should
they
be.
do because of the third party element. Okay, that makes sense. In your childhood, were your parents religious at all?
So my dad was Hindu, I believe, before he got married, and my mom was Muslim before she got married. And then somehow around the time of them getting united, they became Christian. So my dad and my mom are to this day Christian, and I was raised Christian,
Mm.
just a non-denominational Christian.
Yes. Okay. Did you part from that at all?
Yeah, when I was 8.
Okay, that was like definite.
Yeah,
That's beautiful. Okay.
yeah, and I've departed quite heavily from that since I was 8 to the point of attacking it and feeling like I was in it. And this sounds like a funny choice of word, but holier than it.
Mm. Yeah, I've been through that.
I remember thinking, because there's Pascal's wager. I remember thinking from a young age, that's a foolish wager. Because if I was God, I would punish people who believed because they're just believing out of nonsense. And I would be the rational God who would reward those who didn't believe in me.
Mm.
And yeah, I remember saying that to my dad, and he almost cried. He said, I feel so sorry for you, son. Something like that.
Mm. I think I'd like to speak a bit about your relationship to your wife. I think it's always very wonderful to hear you speak about her. Can you tell me how you met her?
Yeah, she was my stylist, my hairstylist. So
Seriously,
yeah. That's
that's why
why many people
your hair is so
they'll
good.
say like, yeah, they'll say you have great hair in almost every like hopefully they don't say almost every, but every episode. And yeah, it's because my wife.
Do you style it yourself now before you go
Well,
out there?
I style it myself, but she cuts it. She makes sure that it's
Yes.
fresh.
Do you do often?
Do I get my hair cut often or
Yeah.
style it often? Yeah, I get my hair cut fairly often. Too much for her, actually. It's a bit of
Okay.
imposition.
Okay, that's good.
See, there's this phrase that if you want to be a liberal or creative, then you need to be conservative in every aspect of your life other than where you want to be creative.
Mm.
And the reason is that Carl Jung was asked about Nietzsche. Why is it that Nietzsche fell prey to suicide and psychosis? And Carl said that Nietzsche had no ground. And so it was just all air. And you need both. Otherwise, you're like the guy from Up, just with balloons floating about, with no home, even. So So for me, I have my conservative aspects are that I work at the same time. Like I have a regimented schedule. I eat fairly much, pretty much the same. I try to go to sleep at the same time, although I have extreme problems, man. Like we can talk about that.
Hmm.
For those who don't know, me and Lucas had this podcast scheduled yesterday, and I have problems sleeping like you wouldn't believe. It wastes hours and hours and hours. Like I think that if I could get my sleep sorted out, I could be twice as productive and I'm already like I already work hard. Like I can work twice as hard or do
Mm.
twice as much.
Mm.
I laid in bed when I sent you that message, Lucas. Like I
Yeah.
sent Luke, people don't know. I sent like Lucas a message at 3 a.m. I don't know if it was I was irascible and it could have been angry, and I apologize if I said
No,
anything
no,
negative
no,
towards
not
you.
at
I
all.
don't know what I'm saying when I'm in that state. And I was just yeah. I sent a message also to the guy who helps with the marketing of this podcast as well. I think I was criticizing him last time. I was almost I don't swear even Lucas, like I don't swear in my
Yeah.
life. I think I almost swore at him It's because I was so upset. I'm laying in bed for 8 hours. Like
Yes.
8 hours laying in bed is such a waste of time. My
Mm.
doctor said, don't lay in bed for more than a half hour to 1 hour. If you're not sleeping, get up and go and do something
Yeah.
because otherwise you associate your bed with not
I've
sleep.
heard that. Yeah.
And so I've associated my bed with not sleep for way too long. Like staying awake for 4 hours is common to me. Like that's every night.
Whoa.
Anyhow, and I got this eight sleep recently, so we'll see how that goes. And that night when I texted you, my eight sleep broke in the middle of the night, and I was so upset
Oh no.
because I couldn't get the water to refill it. There's something that didn't break, but it needed
Yeah.
refilling of water. And anyhow, I apologize for whatever I said to you
Oh, I
and for
think
canceling.
it was a beautiful message actually because I was just reading it and I was like, this is how Kurt thinks. This is your. I just heard the inner monologue. It was very,
Yes.
but I felt bad mostly for you. For me, it's not a problem. I'm a student. I don't have a busy schedule like you do, so I'm all good. But
What do you study?
Egyptology.
Oh, wonderful. I was extremely fascinated. I memorized all of the like or almost all of the Egyptian gods at one point.
Oh wow, I barely
Yeah,
know
I've
five.
forgotten that. Yeah, it was just for fun. Yeah, there's a god for so much. There
Yeah.
was there's a crocodile god. Oh,
Hmm.
I wish I had this at my memory. There was a god for bartering.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah, they have a god for everything.
Yeah.
They have a god for when someone cuts you off in traffic and doesn't give them a wave.
Yeah, I think that what do you actually make of that? What are gods to you? Actually, I asked this to John Vervaeke and he gave a really Vervaekean answer. He said that they are transjective. That's the type of
Yes.
stuff he would say.
Yeah. Gods are, I don't know. Firstly, I don't know. I It could be said that what gods are gods are yeah, that's correct. Checking the grammar there. But they are like if you have a value, what you should have is one overarching value so that all of your goals, your sub goals are united akin to an organization that is working toward one
Yes.
aspect or
Yes,
one
I
lane.
understand.
And gods are when it's not one. You're working on two or three or four different lanes. And it's my understanding of religion that across time you see a collapsing of multi gods to more and more single gods, except in
Hmm.
the case of Christianity. That was the first time that it had broken that and said what is one is actually three. But then it didn't go from 3 to 10 to 20. It
Yes,
didn't go like that.
I understand.
Although in some ways you can think of Catholicism as adopting that a bit with the people
Hmm.
with the statues that they pray to, but it's not exactly the same. So anyhow, the gods can be akin to fractionated values or contradictory values,
Hmm.
indicative of someone who's not united or individuated. But that just means it's all of us that we all worship gods because none
Yeah.
of us are these perfect individuated beings. Not even Jung, not even Carl Jung.
Okay. Actually doing research about this. My thesis is about a specific text, theological text from Egypt, where seemingly they speak of one God as the ultimate God, and all gods are manifestations of this God. And so it's not exactly monotheism, what they have there. Maybe they call it henotheism. I don't know if you're familiar with this term.
Henotheism is belief in one God without denying the others.
Yes, yes. So that they still exist. And it's interesting because it happens multiple times in Egyptian history and Egyptian texts, and they all seem completely contradictory. It's like this God is the one, and then that God is the upper God. And I'm just reading this through my Christian lens, I guess, or Western lens, being like, how can you reconcile these realities? And apparently it didn't matter because they didn't think about false or correct like we do. We have a false or
Uh-huh.
correct religion. If you're a religious
Yes.
person, your religion is correct. If it's one of the three Western ones, but for them it wasn't like that. It was more about sacred or profane, I guess. But I don't want to drift off and talk
No,
about
that's
movies.
that's terribly interesting. Terribly interesting. I know. I Can you tell me more?
Can I tell you more? Well, what's really cool about this specific God that in this specific document is being called the one is that his name means hiddenness or something like that. And it's the
Hiddenness.
yeah. So his name is Amun. Maybe you've heard it, and it comes from the verb iman, which means to hide or to conceal. And one of the reasons why they put him on top is because he doesn't have a name. Because when you have a name, you hold power over someone. And so I read this text. I read it for the first time. I basically went to my supervisor being like, I'm not sure what I want to do, but I have these interests. And I spoke about René Girard and I spoke about sacrifice and I spoke about religion. And he gave me this text. And I started reading and I was like, I kind of agree with it. you know, I started reading. I was like, this very much aligns with the way I think about it because I call myself a Christian, and perhaps because I don't feel my faith is exclusive, maybe I'm not allowed to wear that title. But to me, I understand the idea of other gods existing. To me, I see people in my daily life worshiping other gods. That's a
Hmm.
normal, everyday happening for me. So I don't reject their existence. And I know
But
Jonathan
do you
Pash,
reject their sacredness?
I reject putting them on top. I
So
reject,
do you,
yeah, go
so
ahead.
then would they be more profane, those gods or those people who worship the gods?
I guess if your highest God is not God in his totality, then you are going to be I don't really like the word profane, but you're going to be less aligned, I guess.
Hmm.
You see that in people a lot when their highest God is money or lust. I guess that results in a misalignment. That's, I guess, how I would view it. I don't think those, well, with lust, it's hard to argue for lust in many cases as a good thing.
Hmm.
But if, for example, in Egypt, it's a very interesting example. You know, Seth as a god.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is, as Peterson describes, he's chaos. And a lot of people instantly, Peterson even links him to the devil, which I think is pretty funny because he's like Set, and then he looks at the root and he thinks it's Satan. It's possible. But the Egyptians didn't see him as bad necessarily. You could also channel him, channel chaos. When you go to war, maybe you channel Seth. Maybe Seth is
Uh-huh.
necessary to banish out other gods. When the Egyptians have like snakes on their heads, the snakes are kind of dangerous and bad, but also they protect. So it's something like that. But yeah, trying to remember this interview is about you. So I'm going to try to zoom out a bit, unless you have anything to add to that. But otherwise, I'll
No,
go.
but I have many questions which I'll ask you about later, either off air or toward the end.
Okay, you can do that. You can do that. This is a question I've been meaning to ask you because you already pulled up Carl Jung and Nietzsche, and I was wondering what it is that grounds you because you are someone that thinks a lot and deeply. And I've been in those spaces a little bit in my life, and I realized that for me, I need really something embodied. And I know that you don't, as a kid, you told me you don't like those embodied type of things. You didn't like woodworking, you don't like working on things. For me, those are the exact things that get me out. So is there something that grounds you?
Well, math grounds me. I know that's odd, but math has saved me, like psychologically saved me quite a few times because some of the topics that are on the Toe channel are quite heavy, quite heavy, and can send you or send me especially to a place where it's not a pleasant place at all. And math is so abstract that it's a reprieve from the tyranny of the concrete. Now, also what grounds me is my wife, of course, my wife, like most of all, my wife. Spending time with her is something that's important to me. We have what are called us days, which are just like day to days where we just go, we walk and walk and bike and we rarely eat at a restaurant. We'll take bites and walk because we love to just walk and talk. We don't want to just sit around and wait for food. So that grounds me, and that's important to me. I ensure that there's a part of my week. We both ensure there's a part of our week that we can do that with one another, at least one day a week. So that grounds me. I go to the gym and I don't listen to anything when I'm at the gym, no music, no podcasts. And I think, and so I use it to think, but it grounds me as well.
Hmm.
So I was thinking, as you said, you like to be embodied, and I've recently started taking up swimming lessons because I know how to swim, but barely. But it
Same.
doesn't ground me. I was thinking, does it ground me? No, no. It flounders me. Oh my gosh, it's a frightening experience. Yeah. But I'm surprised I'm way better at it than I thought. Like I made tremendous progress on my first lesson and my
That's
second
good.
lesson. Like I can float on my back. I never thought I could. And I thought I would just sink. And she was showing me, okay, even if you do sink, here's what you do. It's actually, now that I think about it, metaphorically, it may save me later. Because I know there are certain tools that you can gain from the physical world that can be applied to the spiritual one and vice versa. And so I think this is going to be one of the first instances where I take something that's physical and I find the connection to the numinous.
Mm. Okay, that's a good answer. I'm happy you have some practices like that. Do you enjoy the gym?
I hate it and I love it at the same time. Like I almost always dread that I have to go, but I go and toward the end of the workout, uh, like I just, for instance, before we started speaking, I came back from the gym recently
Mm.
and it makes me out of breath, makes me feel, sometimes I feel like I want to throw up. It depends on how hard I work out, but I feel great, like fantastic afterward. And especially Lucas, like I love to eat. I
Mm.
love to eat. I love to pig out. Like I'm someone who there's a feast and famine. There's a phrase called feast and famine. So you fast and then you just overeat. I'm
Yes.
somewhat like that, like surfeit. So I gorge myself way past the point of comfort.
Mm.
But I just love it, and I have to work out in order to
Mm.
make sure that that's somewhat healthy and not overly
Yes.
unhealthy.
Yeah, I recognize that. I haven't so
Yeah,
much now. Yeah, I used to do fasting and I ate once a day
yeah.
at night. It really helped me with my focus during the day, but then at night I would go crazy. I had a while where I just make pancakes every day. That was
Ah,
it was also because you eat once a day, you have to eat that much actually to maintain your weight. So,
yes.
but yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah, that's right. Yeah, especially if you're building muscle, it's not great to do intermittent fasting. It's difficult to
yes, I
maintain and
experienced
grow.
that. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
only recently found that out. So I've been intermittent fasting for maybe 3 years or so. And I was
mm,
wondering, I'm like, man, I'm going to the gym all the time. Like I'm I'm fit, but why aren't I gaining more muscle? Like I'm gaining it extremely slowly.
yeah,
And then I watched some Peter Attia video where
I
he
had the
said you
exact
need
same.
to, right,
You
you
know what's
need to
pernicious
have
about this,
protein.
Kurt? This is
What?
what's pernicious about this. Peter Attia, my friend, he told me, he's like, you got to do fasting. You do once a day, right? So I listened to Peter. I was into Huberman before he had his podcast. I just always followed what they were doing. Peter Attia was eating
Yes.
once a day for years, and then all of a sudden, Peter Attia changes his mind and he starts building muscle like a maniac. Because he's like, you don't. It's not good to eat once a day or to do that for muscle. So I had the exact same journey, and then I just stopped, and now I
Well,
eat. Yeah.
I heard that I saw that there's an article that came out either today or within the week that said that intermittent fasting is associated with a 91% increased risk of cardiovascular damage or heart attacks or whatever it may be. I don't think that's the case. I find when you look into studies like that,
Yeah.
it doesn't work out. But and it was a correlation. So the the cause could be that when you fast intermittently, you have less lean mass, you have less muscle,
Hmm.
and the less muscle is worse for you systemically.
Yes, I
And so
understand.
that can lead to the higher heart attack. I mean, it could be such a loose connection like that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
that makes
but
sense.
intermittent fasting is great for that, well, quote unquote autophagy
Yes.
and lowering risks of cancer and so on. So there are benefits.
Hmm. Hmm.
I never found it increased focus though. I never found anything like Lucas, man. Like I've tried nootropics of all sorts. I never found that anything increases my focus or my my quickness. I found that plenty can dull it. Like ADHD medication would dull me.
Yes.
I know many people are like, "Oh, I can't wait to try to do whatever it is, some stimulant." I've never found anything to provide a benefit to my
Hmm.
intelligence or articulation or creativity, especially. So not even fasting, not even intermittent fasting. It's just all the same. So yes.
No, I get that. I think
Uh,
for me,
uh,
it's more like when what you say, you found things that make it worse, and fasting for me is one of the
yes.
ways of doing something that doesn't make it worse because then I don't eat. I think about food. Well, I used to think about food all the time, which is why I started the fasting. That's what removed my focus. So the
Uh-huh.
fasting increased my focus by me not having to think about food. But it's not. I don't know if it's a
Yeah.
cognitive enhancer. It's just a fault of mine.
Well, when I did my first 4-day fast, I saw I realized how much time I spent not only thinking about food, but preparing food or
Mm,
going out to eat or cooking or whatever it may be. And then you have so much more time.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. I was also single at the time, so life was just read for the whole day. That's I don't I don't want those times anymore, but there was something beautiful about them.
Uh-huh.
You
Are
know?
you living with your partner now?
Yes, yes, we're engaged, so
Oh,
we've been
wonderful.
for a while.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man. Thank you. It's kind of a weird thing to do these days.
Are you frightened? Are you afraid? Are you exhilarated?
I feel that it's a natural progression, and I decided to want to get married when I was 19, and so being 22 now, it doesn't feel weird. I'm happy and I'm excited to do it, and I'm excited to see everyone happy and my family happy and her happy, and
Mhm.
to take that commitment to another level. But it feels for the both of us more like showing it to the outer world, and the commitment was already there. It's now just, yeah, I guess sharing it. So that's what I feel about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you got married. That's also,
Yeah.
it's quite a, I don't know, it feels kind of weird to do these days, but I'm happy to do it. I think it's important.
So, speaking of individuation and speaking about what you had mentioned as currently we think about truth as, sorry, we think about religions as true or not true. We've gotten into this frame since the Enlightenment, and we think of truth as facts, facts that are disclosed to me as the person, as the individual. I
Mm,
was speaking to my friend Matthew. I'm not sure if you know him, and I could tell you his last name off air because I'm unsure if he's comfortable with me
sure.
sharing his information. But Matthew was saying that in Christianity, the well, ever since the ever since Kant formally separated the transcendental, so truth, beauty, and
Yes.
love, which used to be tied together,
Yes. I know. Yeah.
that Marx and Nietzsche came in and said, okay, what truth is this disclosure of facts, and that you'll always be suspicious and feel like they're hidden agendas. It's something else I dislike about the UFO scene
Mm,
is that it seems like they have the framing completely incorrect, where there's a concept called hermeneutics of suspicion,
yeah.
where you'll always be suspicious of the next facts.
Hmm.
Whatever is disclosed to you, you can always feel like that's not enough and there's never a resolution. And truth isn't this, truth has become about an uncovering of facts to me rather than a participation in something beautiful, which is tied to love.
Yes. Yes.
So I feel like the entire framing is incorrect. And it's so difficult to articulate because our entire culture is based off of truth equals facts equals rationality
Yes. You're
or
so
there's
deep into the
yes.
trenches of that. Yes, I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah, I
And
recognize that. But that's why,
so,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. No, continue. That's why what?
For me, the answer is applying the hermeneutics of beauty instead, which is something that Vervaeke speaks about.
Hmm.
And so that's actually, it goes back to what I spoke about before about me being suspicious about politicians and all these things, politicians and this corrupt institutions.
Yes.
It's a lens at the end of the day. And the hermeneutics or the interpretation of reality I have now is one of beauty, I guess, love, and it helps me. And I've actually argued before that I think that's more real, but I'm not going to put that in a math equation. I will probably fail, but it feels more real to me.
Yeah. It also leads to a sense of hopelessness and cynicism. And then because people can't deal with their, people don't want to be people don't want hope because they can't deal with their disappointment. And because they can't deal with their disappointment, they then project this miasma of mistrust and repugnance.
Mm,
So it's not good for them. It's not good for society. And truth used to be seen as somehow a relationship, not just it's not just a cold, hard, isolated node to be grasped, but somehow there's a relationship between you and the community, and you participate in your community and you can uncover. It's not even about uncovering truth. It's so difficult for me to say. But anyway, going back to the individual and you talking about being married, Matthew was saying that in Christianity, some interpretations of Christianity is that the individual isn't yourself, it's the the family. And so you yourself
mm,
are not even full. You're not even whole until
mm,
you're a part of a family,
mm.
until you're married and you have kids. So it's a tripartite individual. And that's terribly interesting. And it also makes sense then at another level. I've always wondered, why is it that grandparents love their grandkids so much, like so much, more than their more than their kids? So the easiest answer is, well, they don't have to clean up after them. And okay, that's like
Yes.
this such a surface level answer. But I think a cosmic answer that's built into us from our culture in could be at the religious level is that if it's the case that you're not whole until you have your own family, then in some sense, even if I have my family is still not whole until my son or daughter has a family
Mm, mm.
because they're still not an individual. And also, in some sense, this means while you're a baby, you're more of an individual than you are as an adult. Because when you're an adult, you then have the responsibility of having responsibility
Yes.
and
Yes.
being a family. But when you're a kid, you're not. So you're wholer as a family when you have a child than when you do when you have an aimless entity just living in your house. And it also reminded me of the Jewish symbol of the Star of David, which are interlocked triangles. Because if that's the case, then the individual web, the cosmos is net with these triangles. So the tripartite mother, father, children, but then the child is also part of its own triangle, and
Mm.
so on. And so you get this, the mathematician would say a simplicial decomposition, which is like a triangulation, but it's more than that because it's an interlocking triangulation.
I've heard theories about Christianity or Christ creating the individual as we speak, and that before that we didn't even have a conception of an individual, let's say. So in ancient Rome, like you say, you wouldn't have the individual, you'd have actually the family. And in Egypt, I did one of my papers about this. Well, you have a lot of words for soul, so that's a bit of a tricky one, but normal people wouldn't have that. Only the king would have it, a soul.
Hmm.
Only the king would be an individual. And then as the time progresses in the Middle Kingdom, some rich people get to be an individual as well. And then it
Hmm.
democratizes, that's the term they use. But this seems to contradict what you say. It's interesting because so some people argue that Christ actually brings the idea of an individual, especially as pertaining to property rights. Um, but in a way, it's actually not that at all. And I think people experience that in their lives when they make it all about them, especially if they're an adult, like you say, not as a baby, because then you're just a blob. But yeah, that's just something to add.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about that because then it's odd to think that people before Jesus had no soul, but then Jesus brought to them souls so that they can be. I don't know how to make sense of that. But by the way, just I also have this phrase of the fact that I don't know how to make sense of it doesn't mean it doesn't make sense. It just means I don't know how to make sense of it. The universe
Yes.
is far wiser than myself. So I don't know. I think I see that as a deficiency in myself if I don't know how to make sense of something. Some people say it as a slam dunk, like, oh, that I don't know what you mean. Like an intellectual would love to say that. What does that mean?
Yeah.
As if what you said was nonsensical and so they can dismiss it. And it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. And they say that triumphantly, and I say that tentatively.
Mm. It's what I appreciate, to be honest, that quality. Jordan Peterson always says you got to focus on what bugs you. And there's some
Hmm.
very specific things that bug me. One of them is this type of behavior where it's a dominance, I guess, of the left hemisphere, which a lot of people connect to certainty and argumentation. For me, it's my journey in the last couple of years is basically realizing again and again that I'm wrong and again and
Hmm.
starting over. And then I just think about how certain so many people in my proximity are about their worldviews and their ideas. And that is what bugs me. And then I'd like to channel that by putting it back on myself and really trying to be as humble as possible. But still, that remains difficult with certain things because we are so propositionally oriented. I don't think I can escape that fully. There's no question in there, by the way. I was just responding.
Well, I think that our interpretation of Buddhism, and I'm saying that phrase, I'm saying that specifically rather than Buddhism, but our interpretation of Buddhism or the predominant Western interpretation, let me be specific, the predominant Western interpretation of Buddhism is actually one of a left brain rather than a right brain, but it's the left brain thinking that it's the right brain. So what I mean is
Mm,
that what happens is that you have something called vicious abstractionism, which comes from William James. It's a term, great piece of terminology people should look up more, know more about. Vicious abstractionism is when you take something like this cup and then you say, okay, well, what makes a cup a cup? Well, it's the fact that it fills some, and then you start to abstract away qualities until you get what is no longer this cup. And you start talking about a cup as such, a cup as an entity. And then you start proving or disproving properties of that or relationships with that or anti-relationships with that and say prove it at this level and then that's somehow characteristic of it at this concrete level where all the context is. And so you remove the context and you prove something about that case as if that says something about the context full case. So what happens in many psychedelic experiences, especially of those which are, again, that's part of the hermeneutics of suspicion, where you think that truth is just to be revealed to you. It's just me, and I just
mm,
need to understand. I need to get it. Is that you have these insights, like literally, you have these insights, and then, and you feel, and uh, it's also difficult to separate some of these insights from our interpretation of Buddhism and mindfulness, especially mindfulness, where they say we think it's secular because mindfulness is secular, but it's not entirely. It's not philosophically neutral because it'll say to you, you are not your thoughts. Like notice that you are not. Like it's automatically programming you in a sense, quote unquote, to say you are not your thoughts. Now, you may not be your thoughts, but to think of it as a neutral proposition or a neutral exercise, I think that's false. Anyhow, they'll say, look, you are not your thoughts. Notice your thoughts. Notice that you are not your thoughts, and blah, 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 blah. So what is happening is that it's like, and notice you are not your body, and notice blah, 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 blah. So William James would call this a vicious abstractionism, where you're starting to abstract away what the self is until you get this pure version of a self, this just pure awareness. And then you say, oh, well, that's the ultimate truth. And so this must be some illusory truth. And what you've done is you've removed the nuance and the context. And so the right brain lives in the nuance and the context and the holism, the holistic, even though
I
I don't like
see.
that phrase.
Yes.
Yes. And so the left brain actually loves abstractionism and seeing everything as the same. So that's another reason why racism is, in some sense, a left brain phenomenon. And by the way, for any neuroscientists or psychologists who are listening, when I'm speaking about the left brain or right brain, I'm using the Ian McGilchrist version of the left brain and right brain, which isn't a distinct left-right brain asymmetry or dichotomy. I understand that. This is just at the metaphoric level, and there is some neurological basis to it, but it's not like it's entirely supposed to be taken as literally. Anyhow, the left brain sees you as a white person and thinks you're the same as all white people, or sees me as a man or a brown man and thinks I'm the same as all brown men, and thus can be treated as such. Whereas the right brain wants to see all the context and get more and more information. Let me put more and more into it. Let me see differences and uniqueness. Let me actually see distinctness. This is another reason why people say we need to see the sameness in everyone. And I'm like, you think you're being holistic, but you're actually, it's the difference. I call it the difference between right brain ruling and right brain rhetoric. It's just right brain rhetoric. So it's someone believing that they're possessed by their right brain, but they're doing so with a left-brained agenda.
Yes. Yes, that's excellent.
And by the way, the right brain itself would see holism is required at times, but so is reductionism at times and particulars at times. So the right brain itself gives up itself, whereas the left brain wants to retain. When you see people talk about holism, like we need more holistic, everything's holistic. I'm extremely suspicious that person hasn't done an investigation into themselves or their motivations. I'm extremely suspicious.
It rings similar to
It's
me.
a red flag.
Yes, yes. It's like decentralization. There's this it's just so popular to say like you want things to be decentralized, and it's just a direction, you know. What are you even talking about? It's the opposite of centralization, so it must be good because centralization is corrupt, and you know, it's like
it's like it's akin to what people think of as a politically correct word. So just some piece of term, a buzzword that you can use, and then you sound enlightened, and it's an unbridled good. And let me say it, and people will clap like, "Oh, you're going against the system," but they don't realize what I'm saying is so a part of the system. It's actually like
it's completely in the water.
It's so in trend right now. It's if you actually wanted to go against the grain and be a contrarian, you would say, "I'm for centralization. I'm for more. I'm for less freedom."
Yes, right now it is. No, but it's the whole thing with the directions, being progressive, being conservative. Brad Weinstein said something like, "If I'm really a good progressive, I hope I'm no longer a progressive in the future, because then we will have progressed to the point that I wanted to get to, and it's okay." Do you know what I mean? Because if you're progressive right now in the way that the world is now, you want it to change a certain way. But once it's there, it's okay. You can relax. So that's why it really opened my eyes one day when I heard someone say this. He's like, I'm a libertarian right now, but in a different reality where the variables are different, I could have been this and I could have been that, because it completely depends on the world we operate in politically. What is necessary. So to go a bit back to Egypt, it's a kingdom, starts off as early dynasties, you start off as an old kingdom, and then it goes into an intermediate period. So it's decentralization and centralization, and it comes back in waves. And sometimes you need more, and sometimes you need the other. And similar with that is the left brain and the right brain. They need to work together to get to a balance. I think, but I might be wrong.
So I don't know if I agree with Brett on that, but I also don't know exactly what Brett said. So I'm trusting your recapitulation
Okay,
of it.
don't trust my
But
stop.
yeah,
Stop.
yeah, yeah. So
This is a this is
but
a
what I would say is that like it depends on what progressive is. Because to
yeah.
me, when I hear the term progressive, it's someone who is for progress, which is for a process, not a state. So like
Mm,
I know that's an odd way to phrase it because state is like the government, but I mean state as in
I
like
understand.
something
Yes, yes,
versus
yes.
the transformation of that something. So to me, progressive in its name suggests falling in love with the transformation and not the something. And
Mm,
so if that's the case, then there is dissatisfaction built in to being up to being solely for progress because nothing will ever be sufficient. It's another reason why there's so much that even though, yeah, there's about the UFO, just talk about the UFO statements that are just believed. So many, almost everything about the UFO scene, I don't accept. I see as so something that's said is that look, we need to know, like the government needs to tell us about this because look at, or the aliens need to tell us about this, or whatever it is needs to tell us about this because of the technology here and this technology. Why? Because then we could have faster so and so and more this and this. And I'm thinking you will never be satisfied, even when you get to that space. Like what we have is so absolutely fascinating. Like, I mean, not fascinating, but luxurious and splendid. Like it's a luxury. The fact that we have Uber Eats, man.
yes.
Like we can order food. We can order multiple different kinds of food. We can tip the driver. So should we choose, we can choose what to order on the food on the app. We can choose when it gets to us. And and that's something that kings didn't have access to 100 years ago, even especially not 200 years ago. So in some sense, the fact that we have electricity and these walls with right angles and heat and air conditioning and eight sleep, it's like
When
it's
it works.
in the West. Yeah, in the West, it's like it's an unbelievable privilege, like this sumptuous splendor that we have, and there's profuse amount of lavishness. And then the statement is, well, we could have more. And I just don't, even if it's, well, look, I want more because I want to get clean water to people who don't have clean water. That's noble. I
Mm,
I don't see their indignation as being that. I see it as being, it's too personal. It's too
mm,
personal for it to be so holy. And it's like it's to me indicative of someone who hasn't examined their own motivations
yes.
for them to be for them to have such a negative reaction. It's rare that a negative reaction like that isn't based in something egotistical rather than something that is like that is a metaphysical, sorry, a moral, some moral imperative or moral less than, like they
Mm,
don't have enough and it's
mm,
not me and therefore I don't think they care that much. But even if it's the case, which I think that's great, that's a great case, people should have more electricity. Some people who don't have electricity should have electricity and running water. I just don't see, if we had flying cars or this transportation, I don't see why we wouldn't at that point say, yeah, but we should have more. We should have more.
yes.
It's, I see, going back to the family and truth being tied to love. It's another reason why I think that Lou Elizondo, who is a UFO bigwig, said in an interview once, what is the answer? What should we do? Like you're a part of the government or were, and at least you claim to be, and you claim to have all of this knowledge, but you can't say, and so on. So if you can't say it because you're under an NDA, what should we do? He said you should go to your family, hug them, and be with them. And I don't think he said it for the reasons that I'm making the connection, but I think what he was saying was far wiser than he realizes. I think there's something truthful about 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 love, and there is, again, going back to this truth as something to be revealed to me as an individual.
Mm,
There's a saying that you can't be. It's foolish to be sane in a sick society. Like it is good to be crazy because society is messed up. So if society is false at some fundamental level, then if you are to be on the right track, you will necessarily look insane. I don't know if that's true because it presumes truth to be something that you're just correct about as an individual and not a relationship. I don't know how much of society is responsible for what's truthful. And it sounds odd. It sounds odd to say that because what is truth? Isn't it's what are you then saying truth is? Are you saying truth is different than propositions? Yes. I don't think truths are sole propositions. But what are they? I don't know. I don't think we have the words for it. I think we've been lost since Aristotle. I think so much like, hey, speaking about someone who thinks quite wacky ideas, I don't think that all there is all there is.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the, well, yeah, we can get into that rabbit hole another
I would like to ask about love.
time. Sure.
What role does it play in your worldview? Or maybe actually you say you don't have the worldview yet because you're doing the theories of everything and you're building, I guess, a worldview. But what role does love play in reality according to you?
So I mentioned earlier that there's love, there's beauty and truth, and that the ancients saw them as tied. I don't see them as tied. I'm just saying that the ancients saw them as tied. I
Mhm.
see I see love and truth could be tied. And some people say that beauty is what has to come first because in order to get love and truth, you need to somehow see something as beautiful and have it revealed to you. Again, I think that's part of the hermeneutics of suspicion, but you called it the hermeneutics of beauty. And I haven't looked into that, so I don't know. But anyhow, love to me is not the same as beauty. All of that's to say that. Love to me is, well, love, I don't know what love is, but love does play a significant role in my life. Like my my love for my wife is almost everything, man. And I love what I do. I love what I love my life. I love my life, man. Like I have so much. Like I have this desk is a nice desk. It's a wooden desk. My dad made this for me. My dad's a wood used to be a woodworker, by the way. That's why I brought that up earlier. So so that aspect he wasn't able to give to me, but the chess and the math he gave.
Good.
So this is a nice table. I love this table. I I love my car. A just a Corolla, but I love my car. I love my house here. I love it. I love these lights. I love the flooring. I love my wife. I love my fridge. Like it's all just so wonderful. I can't believe that I have all this. And it's not fancy, but it's not bad. I love my life. I love what I get to do. I love my wife. Love is is an important part of my life. It's an integral part, but also I'm realizing now I don't cultivate love, meaning I don't think about how can I have more love in my life. I do think about how can I be more loving, but I
Mhm.
don't think about it as how can I have more love. Not love given to me, but just more love saturated in this world. So maybe that's something I should think more about.
No, I think it's good because what you're
By the way,
doing,
when I'm looking off, sorry,
yeah. No,
this
go ahead.
if
Please go
I'm
ahead.
looking off here, there are no notes here in case it looks like I'm reading notes. This is a blank screen, but it's just I tend to look down into the left when I think.
That's all right.
Sometimes I look here, but I also have neck problems, so it depends on where.
Okay. Okay, now I can see you again. I'm so sorry about this, Kurt.
Yeah, it says your bandwidth is low.
Yeah, I'm sure
It's
that's it.
okay. I'm sorry. I
No, it's
apologize.
okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
Yes, yeah.
So the you do the
You
neck exercises by Huberman.
Yeah, I do my neck exercise. I'm not by Huberman necessarily. I mean, it's partially inspired by him, but I did neck exercises far before I even heard about him. It's just I've increased them now
Yeah.
because it's great for whiplash if you ever get in a car accident, just
Yeah.
for stability. And so it often gives me neck problems on one side or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Also, because of the way this camera is framed for podcasts, it ends up hurting me on one side because I have to tilt my body,
Yeah.
whereas my regular screen is directly in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna make a comment about you saying that you wanted to look into that, about having love, having more love in your life. And I think that
Uh-huh.
you actually formulated it correctly when you said you want to be more loving, because I think it's a difference between being and having. And I don't think love is exactly something to have. I think once we formulate it as such, we get into trouble.
Oh, that's extremely wise.
Thank you. I think C.S. Lewis helped me with that, understanding that. I think his best work is his last work, which is very underread. So if you ever have the time, or people listening, I recommend the book Till We Have Faces, which is an exploration of the difference between possessing and love. And I guess being
Hmm.
loving, but I'm not sure. It mostly shows the pitfall of that. But I think you're doing a wonderful job of loving things and loving people. I think that's very important.
So I have rules for myself that I've written down. One of the rules is that I'm never allowed to upvote my own comment on anything. So I'm never allowed to say something and then give it a thumbs up.
That's good.
And but another rule of mine is I'm never allowed to give a negative to a comment. So
Okay.
I'm only allowed to give thumbs up to a comment. The only exceptions are if it's a spam comment, like someone saying,
Hmm.
contact me
Yes.
for psychedelics and Bitcoin. Like then I'll report that or thumb it down. But I'm not allowed to thumb down someone because often I find that my criticism of people comes from a deep-seated resentment and jealousness and envy.
Yeah.
So I try to temper that. Sometimes if I'm being exceptionally well behaved, I will thumbs up a comment that I'm or a person that I'm desirous of, like I rivalrous that's a rival of mine in a sense in the YouTube in the podcast space or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
I'm not that good all the time. But I won't thumbs them down.
Mm.
That's a rule of mine.
Yeah.
I have my own. I think it's 20 commandments.
You have 20.
Yeah, I'm building up to 157.
That's your number, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that I remember. That's good. No, I think I have the same. I have trouble with it though, because I have this thing where I want to stop criticizing because I realize it's so bad for me. Like it's so bad for me. So I have this YouTube channel. Sometimes I make YouTube videos that are not related to my podcast. And so I'm brainstorming what do I want to make something about? And I want to make them beautiful. But oftentimes I think, oh, I could do a video about this, criticizing that, and then, and it's always pulling me down. But then I also think maybe there should be critics, maybe there should be people that do that. I just know that for myself it's corrupting when I do it.
Hmm.
It doesn't come from a right place. I don't know if it's possible for people to do it where it does come from a right place. I hope there is, because then that's the correcting mechanism in society without it being corrupting to individuals.
Yeah,
But
I don't think much about whether someone else is critiquing from a positive or negative place.
yeah.
I think I know for myself my criticisms are from a place of hostility and feeling inadequate and insecure.
Mm.
So I temper it in myself, but it's not for me to say that about someone else.
Yeah, I understand that. I feel the same way. And also, as you say that, I'm thinking that even if the criticism doesn't come from a right place from someone else, I can still use it to improve my condition. And so I can
Hmm.
still be grateful for it, even though in a way it comes from a bad place. But I
In
guess it's
many
similar, yeah.
ways,
Yeah. Sorry.
there's a benefit to bias. So people like to say, "Oh, I'm not going to engage with that person in a debate because they're biased." I love people who are biased because they'll get to a point of view and a statement or a theorem or whatever it may be that I would never have come to because I didn't have the motivation to sustain me through that mountainous terrain to get there.
Yes.
So someone who is biased to prove something in the religious scene or in the UFO scene will present something that I would never have thought of. And someone who is biased to disprove would have come up with evidence against or disproof that I never would have thought of because they've stayed with it longer and that motivation is necessary to sustain them. In terms of bias, there's a guy named Andrew Wiles who's a professor of mathematics, and you can think of him as being biased towards wanting to prove Fermat's last theorem, one of the greatest unsolved math problems up until the time that he solved it. And he solved it because he was biased in a sense. He was biased to be the one to solve it. He was biased that there existed a proof. So I don't I don't care about people who have biases. Like it doesn't that to me is some ad hominem to say, well, they're biased, I won't engage with them.
Yeah.
Who cares? Just deal with the arguments.
Mm-hmm. It's very good. I like it. And it reminds me of, I don't know, of athletes, for example, or other people that they dedicate their life to something, or they go all in for something, or they take a path that not a lot of people would describe as balanced or even wise,
Mm-hmm.
but they do something that's so extraordinary. It's like, even though I will never want to do that or want to make the sacrifices that you made, it's still beautiful in a sense. I see beauty there. Like David Goggins, for example. Who on earth would want to be
Mm-hmm.
David Goggins? But he's an icon for something. He's disciplined. He's the god of
Mm-hmm.
discipline, but on earth, let's say. So there's a place for him.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I would feel about it.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm afraid of my internet connection right now, but I'm still gonna ask you an open question. So I'm crossing my fingers for this one. What is your relationship to God if you have one? And how has your thought developed about God throughout these years?
So see, I don't know if it should be framed like this, by the way, like what I'm about to say. So our 21st century question is, does God exist or not exist? I don't know if that's the right framing. So a part of me feels like to talk about political correctness, it's politically correct to say that the future is female. I'm sure you've heard that. And I think, again, just like some people, I think they're correct and they don't realize how correct they are. I think that it's masculine to think in terms of the facts and just give me the disclosure. And it's feminine to think about the framing and the questions. And so I think the future is female. I think that is what's required. And I don't think that we're framing it correctly. I don't think I'm framing God correctly. I I pray for faith, but I pray for not faith at the same time. I'm afraid of what it would be like if God exists, and I'm afraid of what it would be like if God doesn't exist. So I don't know how to answer that. In some place, in some sense, it's see, I was at the store a couple days ago, 2 days ago or so, and there was this kid who's misbehaving, and then I just want to I want to discipline the kid, but then I'm like, it's not my place. It's not my place. That's the parent's place. And that sense of it's not my place is something that I come to more and more. So it's not my place to name my own relationship with God. It's not my place to even identify myself. So that's something that our culture has, is that I give myself my identity.
Mm.
I don't think that's my place. I think it's I think it's your place. I think it's society's place to name me, but it's not mine, and it's not something we're comfortable with because we want to have control over all aspects. But it's just it's not my place, and I don't know what to say about it other than that.
That's good. I think it's true. I'm starting to have to rethink my own answer to this question now,
Mhm.
which I
So
think
just so
is.
you know, in terms of faith, there are six. So I was doing this disquisition of faith, like a personal disquisition just for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading some of the Stanford Encyclopedia. I believe it was from this. Now, don't quote me on this because I wasn't ever able to find the source of this again. But there was delineated six forms of faith. So we think of faith as you just have faith in this, and then it's just you say faith, as if it's one thing, but it's actually several. In the same way we say consciousness as if it's one aspect, but there's adjectival consciousness and self-reflective consciousness and aspectual consciousness. I believe aspectual is another type.
Mm-hmm.
There are about 5 or 7 different types of consciousness. Access consciousness is another. Anyhow, so there are different forms of faith. So when someone says, "Do I have faith in God?" I don't know what faith. So I had this recent presentation, which I hope people watch. It's called the Polymath presentation. It
Yes.
was a it's a presentation that I was asked to give at a conference called Polymath
Mm-hmm.
by an incubator. And in it, I conjectured that maybe what's fundamental, people talk about what's fundamental as well, it's the atoms that are fundamental. No, it's the subatomic atoms. No, it's the quantum fields, whatever that means. Or it's, I have a problem with the word fields and quantum fields because they're not fields. They're operator valued distributions, which are different than fields. We think of fields as this continuous, smooth water like ripple space, but it's not that exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, or is it the laws of physics themselves, or is it the computation that underlies the system, or is it somehow logic, math is at the fundament, or power, like Nietzsche thought power, and Schopenhauer thought will,
Mm-hmm.
and Heidegger thought, so some people think consciousness, and Heidegger thought caring and attention were fundamental. And I posit that hope maybe is not fundamental, although I'm not saying it isn't. I mean, maybe it isn't, but it seems necessary. So there's something like necessary and sufficient conditions of a mathematician, which are axioms. And so I don't have sufficient conditions for reality, but for us, at least, it seems hope is fundamental. And I've been thinking this for some time. Then I was wondering, how do I square that with many religions that talk about faith as fundamental? Well, actually, there's 6 forms of faith. So one form is that there's special revealed knowledge. So God speaks to you. Another form of faith is just belief. So you believe in the proposition. Another one is existential confidence. Like I have faith that I'm not going to get run over by this bus. Like I just feel like I'm not going to get run over by it. The other two are technical, called doxastic and non-doxastic venture, which has to do with action and believing whether you, sorry, acting as if it's true whether you believe in it.
Yeah.
And the sixth one was hope. So I'm like, okay, that's super interesting. Hope is a form of faith. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that.
Beautiful. I was gonna say we're nearing the end. I don't want to keep you any longer. I wish I could speak for several more hours. I have a million questions, but I mean it when I say that this is an absolute honor, and I think you're one of the very few people that I truly mean this walks the walk. And yeah, I think you're a wise person. I really think so, and I think what you're doing is extremely important. And I thank you for doing that. And I'm sorry if that makes you uncomfortable, but it's how I feel. So thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. It's something you didn't need to give me, but you gave it. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting me, man. I appreciate it. And I hope that it recorded.
We will see. Either way, it's worth the while. Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, let me know. email me, let me know if it recorded. If it didn't record the first half, then let's re-ask the questions. I'll make some time and we can do it right now if you have time. Wait, we'll just rapid fire through the questions.
Thank you. I think it'll be all right. I'll let you know. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for.
but let me know ASAP because otherwise I'm gonna eat.
Will do. Of
Okay.
course.
All right, man. Take care.
See you.
Bye.